I think we're set up recording now. Okay, great. Welcome to our second TNSA talk of 2021. I'm excited you all are able to attend today. We have a good amount of folks today. Right now it's 37, but we had almost 100 register, so that's pretty exciting. It seems like they're getting a little bit more popular as we move along. We have Dayton here today, and he's going to give us a great presentation. We look forward to that. And just remember, if you have an elusive type of name on your Zoom, and I cannot figure out who you are to send your PDH, please send me just a little chat message so I know who you are. And if you receive this, if you receive the invite, I haven't talked in front of people since last week. If you receive the invite via email and not from me directly and respond to me directly that you are attending, please send me your email as well so I can send your information to you. We may have some follow-up information and the PDH going out either this afternoon or in the morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Dayton. Thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to have you.
Great, thanks, Charlene. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. Charlene, I'm excited to present. I'm with Opti, and we help communities mitigate flood risk, reduce sewer overflows, and improve water quality with Watershed intelligence and control. And I'm going to give a few examples of how real communities are using technology to solve these technical stormwater challenges and improve quality of life for their residents, because that's ultimately what we're doing as engineers and municipal workers. We have an hour. I won't speak that long, and there's plenty of time for questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat or just unmute yourself and speak up. I'll pause in between some of these case studies and happy to answer any questions and make this as interactive as we'd like it to be. So with that, I'll just jump right in and go to my first case study, which is how I kind of like to start this. So I'm going to talk about first Albany, New York. Now, Albany is a city of roughly 100,000 people. They experience stormwater challenges like other cities. They have flooding, they have sewer overflows, they have water quality issues. In particular, Albany, they had a really bad storm in 2014 that caused flash flooding and significant damage when they received 3 inches of rain in 1 hour. Albany experiences CSOs to the tune of about 500 million gallons per year, 250 million gallons of which comes through one outfall draining the main trunk line. Now, Albany, like other cities, they have stormwater infrastructure, including one piece of infrastructure I'll talk about today is an 11 million gallon urban lake in the middle of Washington Park. And this lake is used for recreation and is a valuable asset to the community. The lake captures runoff from the upstream drainage area and discharges into the main trunk line that ends up down to the Hudson River. And this lake sits in a precarious spot where just upstream of the lake, Albany's had some really bad flooding before, where this lake, for meeting that stormwater objective, this lake wants to get water away as quickly as possible, create capacity for flood mitigation, which is exactly what you don't want for a piece of infrastructure sitting upstream of your sewer, your combined sewer. This lake wants to hold water back as long as possible, giving the downstream system a chance to regain capacity during storms. So I'll talk today about how Albany is addressing these issues. But first, I want to give a little bit of history. So this is a postcard of Washington Park Lake in 1905. Now, the park has been public property since it was incorporated in 1686. The lake was created when Beaver Kill Run was dammed in the early 1870s. So they dammed up the creek there and created the lake. You can see there's a bridge crossing the lake, which was built in 1875 and is the only remaining original structure in the park, aside from the lake itself. And fun fact, this is when the US Post Office didn't allow you to write on the back of postcards. So the back was undivided and only for the address. And you had to write your note down here at the bottom. Okay, now this is the part of the talk when you realize you've been duped into watching a presentation on postcards. But you can thank my colleague who's a postcard expert. I promise I will get back to stormwater though, but here's Washington Park Lake again. This is 1910. Now we're in the divided back era, so the law has been changed and you can write split back with the note to your recipient and the address all in one place. Another Washington Park Lake postcard. Now notice there's no white border on this postcard, but the image goes all the way to the edges. And then also note this is 1912, so 2 years from now, the world will change with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the start of World War I, well, the world of postcards will change too. And until this time, postcards have been printed by Germany, but during World War I and the decades that followed, postcards were printed domestically, and the US printers lacked the techniques. They didn't know how to print the borderless postcards. So this era became known as the white border era. Now the lake was drained 2 years before this in 1922, drained and cleaned. So prominently featured here, you see a clean lake with birds and people nearby, communicating to the public that this lake is an amenity. It's a healthy amenity for the people to enjoy. 1937, postcards still have white borders, but they're printed on sheet paper with a high rag content that gave them this linen texture. Still kind of nice. And you see Washington Park Lake here featured prominently in the community. This continued through the Second World War, and colors became more vivid and cheerful to provide this nostalgia for easier times and hope for the future. Relative to the lake, they had victory gardens planted in Washington Park, and the lake was used for some irrigation. Going quickly now, 1950, white borders are gone. Photochrome has been invented and put in use. So this is where inks come in. We see the CYMK, the cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, like for printers. Last postcard, this is where we start to get real photo era. And 2 years after this postcard came out, Washington Park received its designation as historic by National Registry of Historic Places. And I'm sure some of you were asking at the start of this talk, why am I showing you all these postcards? Well, the reason is that postcards reflect what is important to society at the time they were printed. So we see Albany's post office and the federal courthouse featured in 1945, really demonstrating the presence of the federal government in New York State. We see the Capitol building in 1908 with some interesting use of color here to show the ornate and important building. The architect that did this in Albany also designed the Canadian Parliament building in Ottawa. Hudson River Line steamer, Albany in 1918. So the first steamer with 3 boilers and 3 stacks, by the way. Again, an important part of the community featured in a postcard over 100 years ago. And now we see Albany's Beaver Park in 1914. So this park is downstream from Washington Park. It collected, again, that beaver kill and ran it through Beaver Park. And Beaver Park was used as brickyards and breweries and was considered an unsanitary mess by the community. But then look, postcard of Beaver Park. We can see underground, we can see these brick access structures where the beaver kill run has been put underground in 1892. And now we're seeing a shift in sanitation for the region. So now going back to our 1914 postcard of Beaver Park, and we see the park not only has become an asset to the community, but featured prominently at the base of this postcard is a stormwater catch basin. Now this catch basin could easily have been excluded from the image, but it's kept on purpose because, like the courthouse and the steamer and the post office, this catch basin is important to the people of Albany, featured on their postcard in 1914. Now see what happens as we move forward in time. Check out what happens. We get to 2014, 100 years later, our catch basin's the same catch basin, still cranking away, doing their job, but the world around it has changed. So the point I was trying to make as we walked through Albany's journey to a modern watershed is that stormwater is an important part of the community here. But now we start Albany's journey to a smart watershed. So we see the same community, their combined sewer trunk line in yellow. Washington Park, with Washington Park Lake, sits upstream of Beaver Park, which has since been named Lincoln Park. We can see that water is being diverted by the interceptor to the wastewater treatment facility. We see a regulator outfalls combined sewage to the Hudson River when flows exceed the plant's capacity. They call this outfall Big C. And this is the most popular one in Albany, again, carrying that 250 million gallons of combined sewer overflow every year. And this is what Albany's watershed looks like now. Now, after some consideration, Albany realized there's more they can do with their infrastructure to mitigate flood risk and reduce CSOs. So we partnered with them. We looked upstream at ways to optimize their system. Us, the city, their consulting partners identified a number of stormwater storage facilities, including Washington Park Lake right here. that can be controlled. And I'll talk about what I mean by control. I'll also note that Smart Cover is a partner of ours. They're monitoring information downstream at the interceptor here, so that information becomes available with the control of these upstream sites. Now, by control, I mean continuous monitoring and adaptive control, where information is leveraged, like the local weather forecast, downstream flow data from Smart Cover, to automatically control the timing and rate of flow through assets like Washington Park Lake. And the way this works is cloud software ingests the data and information, compares what is currently happening in the system to what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future by calculating runoff and estimating what stormwater runoff is going to enter these facilities. And then the software system drains stormwater facilities in advance of storm events to create capacity by actuating a valve or a gate in real time. So this is how these assets like Washington Park Lake and others in Albany are adjusting in real time and working smarter. Now, the equipment they use is third-party off-the-shelf actuators, valves, and sensors. Some systems are solar powered, others are line powered. And again, this is happening in water and this is happening in wastewater. And we're just bringing this technology into stormwater, like Albany. The equipment ties into an online dashboard via cellular gateways pushing data up to the cloud. And then this gives operators and communities real-time insights into the performance of their infrastructure. Sites are operated automatically in response to the weather forecast and downstream conditions. So before storm events, a rainfall event enters the forecast period, runoff is calculated, and the sites are drawn down. During storm events, we're targeting zero discharge out of these facilities, so that, again, it provides some flood risk mitigation and then also gives the downstream system capacity or time to regain capacity, holding water after the storm event, and then slowly releasing during dry weather when the downstream systems can handle that runoff, that inflow. And the operation seems simple, but there's a lot of complexity that goes into it. So for example, in a 24-hour period, there are 96 weather forecasts, over 4,000 input data points, and over 1,400 control decisions for a single facility. And now this gets multiplied when you have a network of sites working together like Albany. And because the forecast and the system conditions are always changing, decisions to hold or release water are constantly updated as well. So every 15 minutes when another weather forecast comes out or when site conditions change, the decisions operating these watersheds are changing automatically. So let's look at Washington Park Lake again. I mentioned this was upstream of the combined sewer and downstream of flooding, where you have flooding happening up here in these neighborhoods in the combined sewer trunk line. Well, now with adaptive controls, the lake can perform both functions, again, these competing functions. They can perform it in an optimized way without compromising aesthetics or recreation of the lake. And that's Albany enhancing existing infrastructure. They're saying, what can I do with the infrastructure I have to get more performance out of it? Then Albany enhances new infrastructure. So like they have an underground detention basin under a ball field, and they have a constructed wetland in an area that has historically flooded and also discharges into the combined sewer. So by building this infrastructure to be controlled, they were able to optimize the performance for both flood mitigation and CSO reduction. And the other thing is now this detention facility can hold water during dry periods, and that water can be used to irrigate the ball field, for example. So it's this multi-use, multi-application infrastructure that's optimized to do more than one thing. And the great thing is it's delivering real results. So specifically, we track wet weather capture at the sites I showed in the Albany's network. Traditional passive infrastructure gets somewhere between 10 and 30% wet weather capture. And it does this by design because the infrastructure, when designed passively, is designed to meet the 2-year, the 10-year, the 100-year storm. Sure, we deal with this all the time, but by design, it's not optimized for any of that. It's designed to work well across a range of storms. What active controls are doing, what these cities are doing with active controls, are optimizing the performance of these facilities for each individual storm event and saying, can my site be redesigned by changing an orifice size or opening a gate partially to increase that effectiveness? So it's taking this infrastructure from 10 to 30% effective to 80 or 90% effective. And it's doing this without building additional storage. So they don't have to buy property and build new stormwater infrastructure. So it's a relatively small investment for a significant increase in performance. And in fact, so Albany is getting about 100x return on investment here. So for every dollar they spend optimizing their assets, that's $100 they don't have to spend building new infrastructure to achieve the same outcome. And now that's money put toward improving level of service, or money spent on education or healthcare, or money back in the pockets of taxpayers. I mean, that's improved quality of life that Albany is getting here. So I want to move on to another case study on flood risk mitigation, but Charlene, I know you said this could be interactive. So if anyone has questions, or if there's anything we can talk about with Albany, I'm happy to pause for a few minutes.
I haven't seen any questions come through chat yet. Mostly it was about how cool those postcards were.
It's cool, right?
A lot of comments about that.
I tricked you. I tricked you into watching a presentation on postcards.
Well, it's really funny because I have my grandmother's scrapbooks and photos from years, from when she put them all together. And a lot of the writing in those older postcards were all in the front, and I had no idea why. So now I know.
Divided back era, law changed in 1907. Mm-hmm.
That is crazy.
Okay, great. Well, I'll move on if there are other questions about Albany.
Looks like I do have one question. How would this work in sinkhole type watersheds?
In sinkhole type watersheds. Mm-hmm. So the way this works is really just optimizing stormwater storage. So anywhere that you can store stormwater, you can optimize the timing and rate of release. So if you're storing stormwater in a place that's going to result in a sinkhole for some reason, then it's just something you would have to account for. But yeah, that's it. Anyway, if you have other questions,
that's all I have. So
okay. Well, feel free. But I'll talk about Ormond Beach. It's a slightly different case study. This is primarily around flood risk mitigation. Ormond Beach is a city of about 45,000 people, and I know this is a coastal city, but the application is similar to what could be deployed in Tennessee, because Ormond Beach has flooding. I mean, like everywhere else, they're seeing flooding, and specifically in 2009, Ormond Beach got 27 inches in 5 days. Now they've had hurricanes before. 2004 was a bad year, but this one made it clear that Ormond Beach's systems didn't have the capacity to capture the storm that resulted in over $50 million in damage in Volusia County. So again, that was 2009. Now in 2014, the city looked at their worst hit area, which was around these 5 lakes in Central Park. They were separate lakes until they were connected in this $3.4 million project, which made these lakes into a single flood mitigation system, serving in a drainage area of about 550 acres. There's a pump station at the end of Lake One that it was a passive pump station at this stage of the project, pumped water into Laurel Creek, eventually to the Halifax River and the Atlantic Ocean. And it operates like you would expect. When the water level gets above 3 feet, the pump kicks on, typical operation. But it became clear that this pump was not able to manage all 5 lakes effectively to mitigate the flood risk and increase resilience. See, it's these houses right here to the side of the lake that were the ones that were flooded in 2009. So again, pump station was not made to connect, to manage the flow from all 5 of these lakes. So the city and their engineers were faced with a choice. They were either going to build another pump station to manage the lakes, or implement adaptive control software to watch the weather forecast, draw down the lakes well in advance of storms, and enhance their existing infrastructure. The first option they were considering was an $8 million investment. It's another large pump station for their community. The second option they were considering is about a $200,000 investment, so a significant difference. So in 2017, the city implemented adaptive controls, like I described in Albany. This detailed site-specific operation was set up with the city and their engineers. There were over 100 different parameters, from watershed characteristics to forecast sensitivity, operational targets, that were established before the system was turned on and then optimized. Now, this represents a paradigm shift away from the traditional process of model, design, build, and then maintain without any any way to go back and change anything to model, design, build, and optimize. So now we can see the way these systems are working and change the way they're designed just by changing settings in software. And to give you some context on how this works in Ormond Beach, we'll take a look at Hurricane Irma. So Hurricane Irma came in 2017, just 7 months after the adaptive control system came online. Total of about $70 billion in damages, an estimated 82 fatalities. That was followed right there by Hurricane Jose, you can see on the right. I was watching the dashboard, the Ormond Beach's dashboard, that weekend from my home in Boston. And when speaking with the staff of Ormond Beach, they were asking themselves 3 questions. They were asking, what is the status of my stormwater infrastructure? What impact is expected? And how can my infrastructure be better prepared? And the great thing is they were able to get these answers by looking at their online systems. So they saw the storm, they saw the status of their pumps, they saw the forecast and how it was evolving every 15 minutes. They saw they were expecting a runoff of 94 acre feet in 24 hours, to give you some context for this system. And they only had 56 acre feet available in storage. And they saw the pumps kick on to prepare for the storm. So the lake drew down 70 acre feet. They received almost 9 inches of rain, and the result was no flooding at the lakes. And tracking the storm, looking at what did happen, in blue with adaptive controls versus what would have happened based on traditional operation, we see that the system likely mitigated flood risk. There would likely have been some flooding had the system not been kicked on and put into the pre-event drawdown. And the biggest thing is now the city employees, this is what they were telling me afterwards. This is huge. The lakes were able to prepare, but the biggest thing is that the operators could see this and know what was happening remotely and really understand what was going on, so they could put their people, their most critical resources, to other areas of the city to prepare for this storm event, because they knew that the system had their lakes under control. After Irma, the city decided they wanted even more visibility, so they added 2 upstream monitoring stations and 1 downstream of the pump station. They're monitoring water level and temperature using lightweight solar power telemetry. Trends are being tracked online. Data from each storm event is automatically identified and separated for easy analysis. So now before storms, the city can go back and check how their system responded to past storms with similar characteristics. So they can see, I'm getting a 3-inch storm event or a 4-inch storm event. How did my system respond to past storm events of the similar characteristics, and does anything need to be changed? And the city did that before Hurricane Dorian in 2019. So what I'm showing here on the right is the forecast evolution for Dorian in Ormond Beach. And at one point, it looked like the city was going to get another 8+ inches. Now, for those that remember, this storm had largely skipped Florida and headed up the coast, still resulting in $3.4 billion of damages. But Dorian was different for the city of Ormond Beach because they were much more aware of their capacity to take manual control of the lakes. So coincidentally, I was in Florida meeting with Ormond Beach and a few other communities on August 29th before the storm. And the city engineer took manual control of the facility and drew it down as a demonstration, and then decided to bring the lake levels down slightly. And then the next day, August 30th, even though the lakes were forecast to have enough capacity, the city engineer drew them down because of some political pressure to avoid flooding, and Dorian looked like it was headed for them. And even though a hurricane turned and Ormond Beach only received 2.5 to 3 inches of rain, this system gave the operators in the community peace of mind to know that their lakes were prepared. So the outcomes of this project really boil down to 3 things. One is economics, so saving in capital and operating expenditure by the city, enhancing their existing assets before building new. Resilience, so the city created 70 acre feet of active storage capacity that's used to protect the community. It's almost the equivalent of building another 70 acre feet in storage. I mean, talk about Texas or other locations. I mean, it's difficult to find 70 acre feet of new storage. The city was able to do that with their existing facility. And then lastly, peace of mind. I mean, turning data into information and actionable insights. So I have one more case study. Again, I'll pause here if there are questions about Ormond Beach or Albany or anything that's come through that we can discuss.
I don't have any questions. I just had a comment that said I'm really excited to see more of this technology be applied to stormwater infrastructure.
Okay.
That's all I have so far.
That's
Shoot. I muted you by accident.
there we go. All right, let's see if that works. It sounds like we're good. All right, well then I'll go to the next case study. We've covered sewer overflows, we've covered flooding. I have this one more case study. It's on water quality and flooding. You'll see there's a multi-use application here in pretty much all of these case studies. But
someone did ask,
yeah.
Where has this system been installed in Tennessee?
So this system has been piloted by the city of Chattanooga years ago. So we did do a project there before Opti was even a company. Actually, there may be some folks from Chattanooga on the line, but I didn't really give an intro to Opti since this is more of a technical discussion about the benefits. But Opti became a company in 2014 and spun out of an engineering firm. And we have done some projects before, and the technology has just grown drastically in the last 10 years. So there was an initial project in Chattanooga, but that's it so far. I will tell you that this technology is in 22 different states, and there's over 160 deployments. So definitely being widely used. A lot for water quality, specifically in the Chesapeake Bay. So, I'll talk about Howard County. It was home to the recently flooded Ellicott City and how they're building out their smart watershed, really with another focus on water quality. So Howard County, like all areas of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, they have to improve water quality. In Maryland, that means providing treated acres, which is really just a proxy for water quality improvement through reduction of nitrogen and phosphorus and sediments. Howard County has existing stormwater ponds providing both water quality and flood mitigation, but they're optimized for neither. Again, they're a piece of infrastructure serving multiple benefits, but by design, not serving either one of them perfectly. So they decide to enhance their ponds with active smart control. And this lets them take this pond, for example, which was a dry pond, providing mostly flood mitigation and a little water quality benefit, and convert it into a wet pond just by implementing controls to hold water during and after storm events. So this brought the water quality benefit up from 14 treated acres to 26 treated acres, again, proxy for water quality improvement. And that 12 treated acre increase is worth over $1 million to the county for their MS4 compliance. They would have to go spend $1 million somewhere else to get the same water quality benefit as taking this dry pond and retrofitting it with active controls. And because this pond is on private property, the landowner also receives a stormwater fee reduction of about $14,000 per year. On the side in Maryland, we've recently done a dry pond study where if you take dry ponds and you put active controls on it, they perform just like wet ponds without compromising any of the flood risk mitigation benefits, which is huge. I mean, think about Tennessee. If there are dry ponds out there providing flood risk mitigation, those ponds could be doing a lot more for water quality or sewer capacity issues with adaptive controls. And the way this works for water quality is we talk about holding water during and after storm events. That increases retention time. And that retention time increases nutrient settling and improves water quality. So the water that's being discharged from these sites is either clean water before storm events because it's been sitting there for days, or clean water 24 to 48 hours after storm events. Again, because we're holding water during that period and allowing these sediments to settle out. So you can visibly see this. This water on the left, under normal conditions, would be discharging downstream during and right after the storm event. But if you hold that water for 2 days, it's much cleaner. So that's how you can get significantly improved water quality with adaptive controls. But in addition to water quality, this site needs to provide flood risk mitigation as it's directly upstream of Old Ellicott City, pictured here. And Ellicott City, for those that tracked it, experienced back-to-back 1,000-year storms in 2016 and 2018, causing significant damage. Now with adaptive controls, this site was able to reduce wet weather flow by 13x and reduce peak flow by almost 2x. And then it also increased the retention time for water quality by 4x. So again, significant damage, a lot of focus here on flood risk mitigation, a lot of focus on water quality and getting both of those benefits. Now, as you can imagine, the county, Howard County, takes safety very seriously with these controlled stormwater infrastructure upstream of heavily flooded areas. So 3 types of fail-safes were established. And this is the same for all of our projects, but I'll show it here for Howard County. But the first fail-safe type is cloud-based. So say if there's a clog in the pond or a sensor stops reading, alarms are sent to operators via email. Operators can then log in via their desktops and take remote manual control and say toggle a valve open and closed. Other interesting ones are the fact that the data and the information is housed in 3 redundant data centers, so the locations of which are not disclosed to prevent cyber attacks and bolster cyber resilience. And then you can go into mechanical fail-safes. So that's the second type, where an on-site battery backup and local fail-safe logic exists in case the site is cut off from the cloud. So there's enough local intelligence to still revert to a fail-safe position. And then finally, there's civil design. So civil design acts as a passive overflow. There's always a passive overflow to make sure water can safely pass. We can see the operation by looking at the dashboard from a storm last year. So we can see the site do pre-event drawdown, and then the storm come in, and then the site do post-event retention and hold water for 24 hours. And again, the point here is it gives operators peace of mind that their infrastructure is working as planned. And again, really what Howard County and Albany and Ormond Beach and all these other communities are doing is just enhancing existing practices. So this isn't a new BMP. It's really just a way to maximize the benefits across applications for already widely used infrastructure, like ponds and underground vaults and wetlands and other systems, by making them work smarter, not harder. So it's a way to optimize all of these applications without having to build separate infrastructure. And I'll just note that it's delivering more than stormwater benefits. I mean, the real benefits are the economic and the resilient and the peace of mind benefits felt by municipalities and the community members that they serve. And this really ties back to improving quality of life, which is what we're here for. And that's it. One last postcard from Ellicott City showing their stormwater infrastructure as an important community asset. I used to live down in this area and swim right here in the Patapsco River. So it's great to see it on a postcard from 1898. Other than that, I'd love to have some discussion, or if there are other questions or thoughts on how this works in Tennessee.
I did have a question that says, are these systems automated, or are there operators who run them?
That's a great question. These systems are fully automated. So the operation of these systems are configured into the software up front. So your Opti will sit down with your engineer and your municipality and discuss the way that these systems are going to operate, and then build that operation automatically into the software. So some clients will never log in and change anything, and their systems just work. And there's a team of people at Opti that watches them to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, but completely automated. Others are more hands-on, and they might want to log into their dashboard and change the operation. They're also really helpful for maintenance. If you want to drain ponds or lakes or vaults down in advance of some maintenance, you can do that remotely without going on site, but all fully automated.
Let me see what else. Back to the New York examples. Any environmental concerns with quickly drawing down lakes in expectation of rain? I can just imagine someone complaining about adverse impact to aquatics.
Also, great question. So the lake in Albany, we don't draw down the entire thing. Even though the valve is at the bottom, the orifice is at the bottom, so technically it could be completely emptied by this system. We've put in the software a barrier that says never draw down below a certain extent. And again, the great thing is that's a software setting. So before, you would have to build a new weir or maybe do stop logs in order to change the normal pool. Here, the normal pool and the minimum drawdown elevation are settings in software that the city can change. So we looked at that and we addressed it. There were other concerns there about drawing down too quickly or too fast or too much during dry weather and causing dry weather overflows. So again, the maximum discharge rate is a setting in the software, so it never discharges beyond a certain CFS.
Great. Let me see what else we have. Does a municipality purchase the sensors and then pay the subscription fee for software dashboard service? I guess she's asking how it all works.
Yeah, so I can, actually, I think I have an example, project life cycle. So the way it works is an engineer will do a concept and design, and Opti works very closely with them. Potentially the project goes out for bid, it depends. Then the software is set up, and again, it's configured site specific. And then installation. So sensors have to be procured, actuated valves have to be procured, controllers have to be bought, solar in some cases. I mean, specifically that can come from Opti, so we resell that equipment, or it can be purchased separately. But most clients will buy it directly from us, and then we configure some of that specifically for their site. So we'll configure an actuated valve and a sensor to work with our control panel. And that's the way it gets deployed. And then there's a software optimization period. So again, I mentioned that we're looking at how these sites are performing and changing the software settings. And then there is an annual software subscription, similar to what you would pay for Microsoft Office or ArcGIS. They're paying for the software license that not only operates all of their sites, but it also brings in all the analytics and the data storage and the support from Opti staff.
Let's see. Can you talk a little bit about experiences working with public and private partnerships to install controls on private property, legal barriers encountered, and how these were addressed?
Yeah, certainly. So on private property, it comes down to, what the drivers are. What's the reason that this private property owner would do this project? So in Maryland and in the Chesapeake Bay, there are drivers around stormwater fee reductions. So sometimes we would go do these projects on private property where, we might have to get a letter of intent or some other contract into where we can optimize their site, and then the benefits can be sold back to a municipality or a government entity. So I can give you another example. Maryland Department of Transportation, they have a requirement to generate water quality, and there's a market in Maryland. So we actually work with private landowners in Maryland to go develop projects on private property and sell those credits back to MDOT. And then those credits, they have to be verified by third parties. They're verified by Maryland Environmental Services, and the practices have to be approved by Maryland Department of the Environment. So it's just something we have to look at. Now, some cities have a process in place for taking over ponds on private property. So for there, it could work very well. If the city takes over the pond maintenance, for example, then they could put adaptive controls on private property.
Great. Any other questions? Anyone have any other questions at all? You can also unmute and ask if you would like to. Nobody?
I could talk more about the integrations. I mentioned Smart Cover before. I mean, this is something we're really seeing that communities are very interested in, because they don't necessarily want to have 15 different dashboards they need to open as more modeling and monitoring and other operations software come on board. So we built this to play very well with others, to where Smart Cover Data, which is a monitoring company, sensor company and a monitoring platform, their data can interact with the Opti platform very easily through our APIs. So if you already have a sensor network out there and you want those sensors and the data collected by those sensors to inform control of your watershed, that can happen. You don't have to redo what you've already done, which is great.
I do have a question. How many installs are private versus public?
I don't know for sure. I would say maybe 25% of our installs are private, somewhere in that range. On private property, again, they may still belong to a public entity, but they may be on private property. I can offer in Hoboken, New Jersey, there's North Hudson Sewerage Authority. So they're the utility responsible for CSO reduction. They let private developers and have an incentive for private developers to put these control systems on their underground vaults. And then the private utility takes over the software subscription at the regional scale. So developers will pay to put the system in the capital part, and then their jurisdiction will end where the control systems start. And the utility takes over an enterprise-wide subscription, which is a great model. I didn't really get into it, but private landowners, they can downsize their systems. When you think about it, if you're optimizing your site, you can either get more benefit out of a storage facility, or you can get the same benefit out of a smaller facility, which is a great win for private developers. And then the utility gets all the data and the operational information. So it's a win-win.
Let's see. What's the most common issue / concern that jurisdictions have in taking on an Opti system for their infrastructure?
The most common issue. There's a whole range that they ask. Operations and maintenance comes up a lot, just because they have to operate these facilities. There's a software subscription associated with it. So on the surface, it can seem like a larger expense, but when you compare it to, you would have to build another stormwater facility in order to get the same benefit. There's operational savings. Sure, with a second facility, you're not paying a software license, or you're not maintaining mechanical equipment, but you still have to mow, and you still have to clear debris, and you still have to take care of these facilities and dredge these facilities. So you're putting a little bit more into some facilities, and then but offsetting the need to maintain others. That comes up.
Let's see. Do you have any pending presentations that show applications that focus on combined sewer rather than stormwater?
Upcoming presentations, I would have to look at exactly what we have upcoming for combined sewer overflow reduction. I would say that we have case studies on Albany that goes into this in much more detail for combined sewer overflow reduction, and a few other cities for combined sewer overflow reduction. So if you wanted to see detailed case studies on Albany or North Hudson Sewerage Authority, for example, feel free to send me an email, and I'm happy to send you something. But I would say it's a really good split, as far as some projects are focused on water quality, some are focused on sewer overflow reduction, and some are focused on flood mitigation. And a lot of them are focused on multiple applications, either water quality and flood, or CSO and flood.
Great. Do we have any other questions? With some good questions today. I know it takes folks just a minute to type, so. I think I already got that question, Maria. I think that's all we have. Great. Anything else, Dayton? That was really interesting.
No, I'm glad it was interesting. I hope this was interesting and relevant for everyone, and look forward to any follow-up questions you might have.
Great. So I will be sending out a follow-up email. Dayton, if there's anything that you would like me to send out with that, please let me know. I normally send their PDH certificate out to the folks who attended. I took attendance today, so I will get that sent out. If there's anything, just let me know. I'll send that along as well.
All right, will do.
And I want to let you guys all know, and Dayton and you as well, that I am recording this, and it will be listed on our website under the TNSA Talks, and it will be towards the bottom. So that will be available to watch for anyone who has missed it. Right. Okay, I just have a couple of updates for TNSA. We are planning on having conference in person at Montgomery Bell State Park, October 19th through 21st. You can go to the website at tnstormwater.org and check that out. Registration is not available yet, but we are accepting abstracts, and all the information is on the website. But if you would like an email regarding that, I did send it out to members the other day, and I think non-members as well. So just look out for that. Our next TNSA talk is April 18th, but I do have some folks who are asking about dates. So hopefully we will get some dates in before then as well. We'd like to have them at least every other week. So if you have a topic that you would like discussed, please let me know. I can find someone for that. Or if you have a topic that you would like to discuss, please just let me know. We have our next region meetings, which will be on Zoom. We are not sure when we will be meeting in person again. I was hoping it would be June for our next region meetings after March, but it will not be until, I'm really thinking, September. So our dates for March are, let me see, March 2nd for the Central Time Zone at 10 a.m. Central Time on Zoom, and I will be sending all of this information out. And for East Time Zone, that is March 5th, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think that's all I have. Thank you so much, Dayton. That was very informative. We're excited to have you, and it's really nice to meet you today. So I really appreciate it.
You too. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
No more questions, anybody? Great. So Dayton, if there's anything that you would like to send out, I'll wait till later this afternoon or in the morning to send the PDH out, but I'll also send your information attached with the email.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much. Everybody have a good afternoon, and hope you're braving the cold. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.